Are you ready? Let's go!
Don't you sometimes just want to talk about everything? You know, there's days when you can just talk about anything. Need to sit back and chat about nothing at all? Nothing but Julie, coming at you with fun and creative topics and interviews.
Did you hear Julie's podcast? She's got the greatest topics.
Come join the chat about everything, anything, and nothing. So unwind and tune in to Nothing But Julie. Great topics and cool interviews with some pretty awesome people. And now, without further delay, here's Nothing But Julie.
Well, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today on this wonderful hump day, Wednesday, December 16th, my sister's birthday. So I wanted to ask you a question. Have you ever had to do something you didn't want to do? I'm sure that's happened to you. I know that it's happened to me. Have you ever not done things that you know you're supposed to do, such as procrastinating? Let's look at the definition of a procrastinator, or to procrastinate. We'll do the verb procrastinate, to delay or postpone action, to put off doing something. More than ever before have I fallen into that category. I notice that when I lack motivation, it is in times like now, when I don't keep myself going, go, and I take extra time for myself or to relax. That's when I lack now the motivation to get up, and I become a huge procrastinator. And so, have you ever been like that? Have you ever been in that kind of a mode where you just can't get into doing anything? But sometimes, if you push yourself, if you really push yourself, you will actually kind of get into it. Like, I hate cleaning my house. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I'm 51 years old. I'm sick of it. But it has to be done. Sometimes, it's like my zen, you know? Even though I don't want to do it, after a period of time, though, I find that doing it actually kind of breaks me out of that lack of motivation that I have acquired, and then really can start doing other things that I've been putting off. So, how do you stop procrastinating? I mean, aside from just making yourself do it, how do you actually get your ass up to do it? I mean, you're not alone, that I can tell you. I mean, many of us fall into this trap. It is not easy it's much easier to become a procrastinator than vice versa. It's kind of like when people gain weight. You know, it's so much easier not to work out. So much easier. But the benefits are worth it, right? So let's look into procrastinating. It is a horrible trap, but we can all overcome it. And that's not what this entire podcast is about. This is like a multi-topic podcast, but I really did want to touch the subject of procrastinating. I wonder, is that the same as being lazy? I wonder, do you believe that kind of falls into the same category, or is it just basically a confusing type of a topic? Maybe both of them together are similar yet different. So, yes, I did look it up. This is from mindtools.com. I really like this website. It says procrastination is an active process. You actually choose to do something else instead of the task that you know you should be doing. But in contrast, laziness suggests apathy, inactivity, and an unwillingness to act. See, they sound very similar, but they're different. When you procrastinate, you're actually choosing to not do something, right? But when you're lazy, it means that you are unwilling to do it. See, there's so many similarities. I tend to believe that maybe they're one and the same. Like, I don't consider myself to be a lazy person, but I have been procrastinating. And what have I been doing in turn? I've been lazy. So it's kind of like the same thing. And it goes on to say the procrastination usually involves ignoring an unpleasant but likely more important task in favor of one that is more enjoyable or easier. Okay, so I've given in to my procrastination impulses, and even small episodes of me being a procrastinator, tends to make me feel guilty. Like I can't believe that I haven't done this. And what else is everyone doing? And what is everyone doing? And I go through all those thoughts in my head, but it doesn't last very long for me because I just have had enough of it, and I'll just push myself. I literally have to get a forklift to pull me up to go do something. I would rather be cleaning my house and have to do something that I know I really don't want to do. But I want to talk about, steps with procrastination. And actually, this was not what my podcast was going to be about. And like I said, bear with me because when I'm done with this topic, I'm moving on to something else. So what about putting off this task? You have to do it. Deep down you want to do it because you like how it feels, or you like how it looks. So what do you wind up doing? You wind up doing low priority things, right? So like you can have a bucket list of things or a to-do list of things that you've been wanting to do for a long time. And even though it needs to be done, it still doesn't get done. And then guess what? Everything starts to add up, right? That to-do list becomes a 2-page to-do list and a 3-page to-do list. Okay, so we tend to kind of replace one thing that's less important or less of a priority. So what can we do? Like I said before, well, why am I procrastinating? Sometimes it is good to kind of question yourself or analyze yourself and understand the reasons why you're procrastinating. So let's say I don't want to wash the sheets. Okay, I just don't want to. I find it to be very boring. Okay, well, what can I do? You can basically tackle it by taking baby steps. Baby steps. And then questioning, what part of this is enjoyable? Even if you cannot think of one enjoyable part. There's got to be something that you enjoy. So I absolutely hate doing the sheets, but I really enjoy having a clean, fresh, soft sheet on my bed. If I don't do a sheet wash, well, then I'm going to be stuck with the same old sheet. So I hate doing it, but I can find one enjoyable thing about doing it. And so maybe it's just that one enjoyable thing that you need to kind of get you over the edge to do what you don't want to do. Even becoming a better organized person, that can really help. Organizing. Because the more you start to organize, the better you can become at not procrastinating. When it comes to me and procrastinating, I am either hot or cold. Okay, it's black or white. There's no gray for me. What do I mean by that? I mean, I'm either all go, go, go or nothing at all. So it really wouldn't work for me to do a few small things. To me, that is so unenjoyable. But sometimes I do overload myself. But I would rather do that, that's just me, than, to procrastinate. But we all get ourselves into these situations. And the best way to do it, at least for me, is to think about the one enjoyable thing. Like, why am I doing it? When COVID hit, my husband and I wrote a list of all of the things that we know we needed to do. Now, we've been in our house 19 years. We had the house built from the ground up. We are one of the original residents living in my community. And because of that, there's some things that need to be redone. And so we made a list, and we could not believe how long this list was. There were so many things that we wanted to do, first starting on the outside. And so we started tackling it. We threw away a lot of stuff. We redid a lot of stuff. We had the house painted. But everything is like a domino effect, Once you do one thing, for example, we have these ficus hedges for privacy. And they were just completely overgrown. And even though we've always cut them, we really needed to do a major cutting, at least 4 feet from the top, obviously. So my husband and I made some phone calls to get estimates for, how much it would cost for people to come in. And so we decided we were going to go with this one guy, and he was supposed to come. He never showed up. Contacted him. He apologized. We rescheduled. About an hour and a half after the time he was supposed to come for the second appointment, he called and said he was running late. Well, guess what? He never showed up. So on to the next person. My husband said, screw this. I'm so sick of counting on people when they can't be counted on. So he goes out and he buys a chainsaw. And he decides that he's going to cut the ficus himself. Now, this is no major feat. It's not like a big deal when you're cutting shrubs or hedges. However, for those of you who don't know about ficus, their branches grow very, very, very thick. And although you can use a chainsaw, it certainly takes an extremely long period of time to do this. And so he started, and he was so into it, and it really came out good. That one teeny spot that he was able to do in 3 hours. 3 hours it took him to cut one teeny spot. And yeah, it looked really good, but it didn't even make a dent, because our ficus are about, I'd say, 7 feet tall and a good 16 to 18 feet long, from, I'd say, the start of our backyard almost to the end. Well, no, actually, that's not right, because our backyard is much bigger than 17 feet. But regardless, he and I knew that it needed to be done. And it was something that we both didn't have done for over a year. So he did this 1 quarter, and then he came inside, and it was days before he decided to do it again. He started to procrastinate. And so it also happened to get very hot. It was April here in South Florida, and he just didn't want to do it anymore. Well, he did. He wound up doing it. He wound up finishing it, and it came out nice. We did need some help from our son and his friend to help us with the cleanup and bring it all to the curb. But regardless, it came out nice. And all the other things that we did ourselves around the house, in the end, and I was saying about the domino effect. So even though we did the ficus and it came out lovely, well, here's the domino effect. We needed to fix some sprinklers. Okay, get the sprinklers fixed. Then we realized that we need to put in mulch because it looked horrible. But prior to putting in the mulch, we had a very wide gap of no grass that we have been wanting to put sod down for a long time. So now we put the sod down. And we made it look really pretty. So now we just had this kind of narrow area of no grass where the ficus is. So then the next thing we knew we needed to do, we needed to get mulch, and we have a truck, but it took 2 trips because we had to go through so much mulch. And just when we thought we were done, then we realized that the hedges that we have in the very, very backyard also needed to be cut and also needed to be mulched. It just was one thing after the next. So I said to my husband, we're going to keep going. We're not going to stop. Every day we're going to do something. And again, this was during COVID. Right at the very beginning, my husband is and was home from work. So it did give us an opportunity, to be able to do more of this stuff. Threw away all the old furniture, got new furniture. But then when you get new furniture, then there's something else that you need to get, and then something else. And then it just didn't end. Well, here we are in December, and I'm happy to say that all of the work on the outside and almost on the inside, we have one more project we have to do, which is putting the wood flooring in some of our rooms. But the majority of it, I would say, is done. But we had procrastinated for years to do it, for years. And the funny thing is all I see are my neighbors out and about, changing their landscaping, getting their homes painted like we did, just changing things up. And I thought, well, this is really funny. We're all doing the same thing. And then I wondered, was it COVID? I'm so sorry that I have a tick in the back of my throat. Was it COVID? Was it the money that some of us came into, the $2,400? Was it just that many of our homes are old? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. It's because many of our homes were almost 19 years old, and many people just did not do a lot around their homes. We had an opportunity to finally do some of these things because my husband was home more. And my neighbors across the street wound up doing a lot of the same things we were doing. I take pride in my home and I keep up after it, but it was just those small things that needed to be done. Well, small and expensive. So that kind of falls into the next category that I want to talk about doing things. And I kind of brought this up at the beginning about things that you really do not want to do, but you know that you have to. And that's even more annoying. It's like, now, I'm an adult and I know that I have to do these things, but I don't want to. And my question is why? Like, why don't we do what we know we're supposed to be doing? What are the reasons behind it? Well, I think that there's several reasons, and I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not about to do any analyzing, but I'm just going to tell you my reasons. And look, I think it's the cornerstone for many of us that we, deep down, we all know that we need to do some things. We know that we'll be happier from it and healthier and just. And for me, I hold on to things. And so until things are done, they'll just stay embedded in my brain and gnaw away at me. So it's for me like getting, a 20-pound weight off my shoulders. And I do feel better. But despite knowing all of this, we sometimes just don't do it. It just kind of becomes one of those things that we then kind of keep in the back of our head. And for me, I'll obsess about it, and not in a bad way. Obsess meaning just I won't stop thinking about it because I know it has to be done. And it sometimes can make my life and other people's lives miserable because they know they have to do this and they don't want to. So they get into a mood. I don't know if many of you have been there. I have. More than I like to admit. Being a homeowner also really sucks because, there's so much that needs to be done. Things are breaking. Things have to be replaced or fixed on an almost constant basis. Living in Florida, a lot of things get moldy very fast. So you really have to make sure that, you're getting your roof power washed and the exterior of your home and all these other things. So it's just we don't have that 6 to 8 month hiatus of everything dying and not having to landscape or do anything. We do this 365 days a year. But I also think a lot of it is fear. Believe it or not, and I know it sounds stupid, but I actually had to analyze it. It's like we know we're getting closer to making things in our lives better. Those things that you have on your list are to improve your quality of life, your home life, things that you really want to do. And in the end, you know it'll make you happy. But I also think that there's a fear that belongs to these bucket lists or to-do lists. Well, it's not really a bucket list, it's a to-do list. I think that when we start getting closer to the things we know will make us feel better, we kind of encounter fear. And I think that it's something that none of us have ever thought about. And I did. And I remember reading an article about this, just wasn't even on the subject that I'm talking about. And I stumbled across it and I was like, oh my God, wow. Like now that I'm reading this, I'm realizing that perhaps there's a lot of logic to it. You know, I mean, you think about all these things that you want to accomplish. It's never only just one. There's always more than one. We know that. And you think of God knows how many reasons why you want to do it. Right? But then in the end, you're kind of like, I feel like I'm just justifying my procrastination. You know what I mean? All right, so what can I do? What can I do so I can follow another way to not justify being procrastinated? Well, the first thing I usually do, and this really does help, kind of like what I've been doing for COVID, that I'm not in it alone. And I'm not the only one going through this. And it's not like a disabling thing. It's just, when I don't want to do something, I have to think that there is not one person who does not feel the way I feel. And all it really means, what the fear really means, is that it is something I should be doing. It is something that I need to conquer. And even though I don't want to do it, I know in the end how great it's going to make me feel. Like earlier when I said about working out, exercise, I hate it. I've been doing it since I was 16 years old in the high school gym. And I'm 51. I'm sick of it. But it's actually more important now than ever in my life that I make sure I stay fit and stay healthy. And it sucks because when you get older, you'd rather not do it. And it is a little bit harder. I start to have a little more aches and pains in some areas that I never had before. And I have my styrofoam roller, and my balls to, for trigger points, But I feel like if I don't do these things, if I don't conquer my supposed fear, well, guess what winds up happening? And like I said this before, you can get up to 2 to 3 to 4 pages of things just piling up, piling up. But the thing of it is, in the end, you have to also say to yourself, oh, shut the fuck up. This is bullshit, this fear. Yeah, it exists, but screw you. I'm still going to take that first step. Like, don't let the fear stop you from moving on. But it's really kind of a difficult task for someone like me who is somewhat of a perfectionist. I am not saying I am a perfectionist with everything. I guess somehow my brain has decided to pick and choose what things I want to be a perfectionist about. And so I realize that, if I am a perfectionist, that means I have to win all the time, be in control all the time. And then I realize that if I do get to control everything and I do get to win, well, what does that mean? That means that there's never an end in sight for me. There's never going to be an end in sight. And I mean, I can continue the rest of my life trying to control things and trying to perfect things, but it's never going to be 100% correct. So, it's never going to be all right. Not all right, but all right. And it can take a lifetime. Like if I decide to procrastinate, like I said before, it can take a lifetime until I'm able to do these things. And guess what? The next thing I know, I'm like 60 years old and I never did any of these things. And these are the bigger things I'm talking about. I'm talking now about my bucket list and the things that I have been wanting to do for a long period of time. And even if there are things that are on there that I'm fearful of, no matter what, I am still going to push myself to do it. And I think that the fear that I was talking about before, that when you don't decide to go through with something, it's like it's like you're failing. You know what I mean? But isn't that what we teach our children? For those of you that have children, that if you don't if you do not fail, you won't learn. You know, at first, if you don't succeed, try and try again. It's what we tell our children. It's what we were probably told throughout our lives. So I have to keep reminding myself of that. You know, that perfectionism is just like this shield of armor that we just kind of carry around on our shoulders, just thinking that I'm protected, you know. This perfectionism, this armor is protecting me. But actually, in the end, it's actually preventing me from taking on certain tasks. Every time you think something that you might be thinking or realizing is correct, the best thing to do is think the opposite and think that maybe the opposite applies as well. So just throw it away. Forget it. Just do the things you want to do. Don't worry about being perfect. Do them wrong. As a matter of fact, make yourself do them wrong. Once you start learning not to be a perfectionist and actually making yourself do things wrong and accepting it, it actually helps. It's not easy for me with certain things. I mean, I won't be able to do that because it's hard for me to let go. I'll just keep thinking about it. But yeah, there have been plenty of times where I have tried and tried and tried until I just knew I couldn't do it anymore. Not purposely doing it wrong, but not being able to do it right. And I would just have to give in. And that would be it. End of that. So that's why I mean, I'm not like a full-time perfectionist, but with some things I am. And I can be a very serious and intense person. And I do like routine, but I also kind of like being very flexible. I'm kind of like, for everything I might say to you, I'm also the opposite. I'm serious, but I'm very funny. And I'm a fun person to be around. I could be very intense, or I can be a jokester at the same time. I might obsess about things, but come on, don't we all? And especially when we have all this extra time on our hands, you know, it is what it is. But at the same time, I will let a lot of things go, something I learned being a mommy. So it's kind of like you have to break how you are as a person, or give yourself a bit of a break. But I do like routines only because it's something that it's like survival mode for me, like organization. And having a child, you learn to be so much more organized, and that routines are good for babies and young children. And you just then kind of start to accept that mindset, and it just is kind of how your life becomes. I mean, I know that some habits are good and some habits are really important. It helps us with accomplishing things. But for someone who is all of the above that I mentioned before, there are going to be times when you have, let's say, a routine, and there's going to be a break in it. Well, what do you do when, well, you're supposed to do this next, but now you can't because of whatever's happening? We wind up really kind of losing our momentum. And I'm only human. And sometimes when you hear those words, you're only human, 3 words or 4. When you hear that, you're only human, sometimes it makes you take a deep breath and realize, oh my God, like that's all I needed to hear. You're not a perfectionist. You're not always 100% right. Routines are going to break in momentum. And so you have to just start learning to go with the flow. Although it's not easy at first, you just have to learn just one day after the next how to do it. Because sometimes when you develop a routine, if there is any kind of a break, you can actually develop a lot of anxiety. And then you get just so tired and exhausted from that. So you might as well learn from an early age that not everything is perfect. Not everything works out 100%. I believe still that having a routine is a really great asset to someone's life, but you have to also calculate that things will break that particular routine. It's not the end of the world. And it's okay to, quote, fail. I never liked that word because I always tried really, really, really hard to be the best version of myself and learned that at a very young age. And so I then, as I got older, had to learn that I am the very best version of myself. I don't have to keep trying to make myself that way. I am. I'm just adding on top of how good I am and how good you are and how good the next person is. Yeah, there's always room for improvement, but it doesn't mean that you are still not the best version of yourself. And stop holding on to every single thing about being a perfectionist, because I hate to tell you this, you're never going to reach your goal, because once you do something, then you want to do something else and do something else. And there's always something else and something else. And you will literally die before you can be that perfect person. So you might as well live and be happy with, your life. What I wanted to say is that when you do lose momentum, okay, and this is important, it doesn't mean to give up. I know I'm kind of bringing you back and forth, but it's about having a good dynamic and moderation. It doesn't mean that, you are someone who fails. I mean, it just means that you're relaxing. No, you're not being lazy, but you're relaxing. You're giving yourself something that it needs differently. And it's such a great feeling to give into that. It's really, it's not very hard, but when you're in the thick of it, it can be hard. But once you then kind of pull yourself out, it gets so much easier. And it's also that we do have a tendency of comparing ourselves to others. I remember, I think I might have mentioned this in one of my podcasts. I had a friend who, when we were younger, we all had, mommy and me, and every week we would have it at a different person's home. And she had told me that she's so exhausted because she was trying to make her home look absolutely perfect, to the point where she wanted the lines of the vacuum to show in her carpeting so it looks like it was cleaned. And the one thing I remember telling her, because I even knew this when I was young, but it didn't mean that I perfected it, was to stop comparing yourself to others. In the midst of you being this perfectionist and trying to get everything done and do everything as perfect as you can, in the back of your mind, you're thinking of other people. Well, what are others doing? Well, this person did this and did that and had this. It's not worth it. You can have someone that's smarter than you, but you are kinder. What if there's someone that's funnier than you, but you're prettier? You're constantly comparing yourself to other people and their homes and what they look like and what you can get done and what you can have accomplished. And it's exhausting. We're so busy comparing that you're missing out on who you really are. And then all those wonderful qualities just start to wither away. I believe that can lead to us kind of getting stuck in this fast-paced world, and we just kind of feel like we're stuck inside this hole, and we wind up repeating the same things that are just dull and makes us not want to keep doing anything. And that has a lot to do with what's been happening with COVID. And maybe even on the contrary, to those who have lost their jobs, there are other people that are working even more than ever. And when you're kind of stuck, for me, it feels like life is just passing me by. And every single day I'm getting older. And what am I doing? I'm doing nothing. You're kind of like on this, what is that called? Like a hamster wheel. and you're just running on this hamster wheel, but you're not going anywhere. So what's the best thing that we can do? I don't know if you're a good time manager, but I am. And that is probably one of the best pieces of advice that I can give you, is to manage your time in the best way that you can, and be able to allot a certain amount of time for yourself, let's say for work, a certain amount of time, for chores, a certain amount of time for this, and for your children and your wife or your husband, and realize that you were actually spending too much time doing one thing than the other. Like, let's say your wife and your children are priority, but you realize that you're spending more time at work. Well, you can change that by being a better person at time management. But also that takes a lot of planning. You need to sit down and maybe have a list of the things that you do in your life, the things that need to be done, and prioritize them. Because it can become very, very overwhelming when you have an enormous amount of things in your life and that you've run out of time. See, for me, no matter how busy I've ever been in my life, I've always made time for friends. I've always made time for family. I never use the, oh, I'm so tired, oh, I've been so busy. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I have been busy and I have been tired. So I know that statement can be true, that I'm too busy and I'm too tired. The part that's not true is being too busy or being too tired. So you always have time. You always can make time. The question is, are you a good or bad time manager, or are you full of shit and just telling people that you've been too busy? I've always made time, no matter how tired I was or how very, very little time I would have. I would still take that moment and still reach out to people. And so that is just because I was good at managing my time, to where I would give myself a certain amount of time for myself, for the things I wanted to do for myself. And it just took very little planning. You just decided what you wanted to do and you allotted it. And there's absolutely no excuses now with, the advent of technology and iPhones and all that. I mean, it's really something that is probably the best thing you can do for yourself, especially mapping out time just for yourself, because then you start like every day off feeling overwhelmed. See, for me, when I have things written down, I no longer have them in my head, and I don't have to keep thinking, okay, wait, what else did I have to do today? I actually write it down, or I'll put it in my iPhone calendar, and my reminders, or even an alarm. And this way, I don't have to think or obsess about what I need to do for the day. I am going to be reminded, and when it goes off, okay, I think about it then. It's really helped me not be exhausted with thinking or feeling just overwhelmed, because now I don't have to. I already thought of it. Now I'm locking it away, and I'm going to wait to be reminded. I think it's really important that, whatever you need or feel that you need to accomplish in your life, you should definitely have the lists that I spoke about. And I also think that there are times when you are writing out these things that you want to do. Some of them might not be as important as you think they are. I think of the times when I would cross off some of those things on the list and think to myself, well, what is it I really want to do besides what is it that I have to do? I would maybe have two separate lists of the things I know I have to do, like the cleaning, or and the things that I want to do, and wound up doing the things that I knew I had to do. And that is what helped me in the end from not doing the things that I need to do to actually doing them. You see? Kind of makes you think a little bit. I think that it's a lot of fun when you kind of come to that realization of, oh, I really need to do this and I can't, and then finding out ways of doing it. So my question to you is, have you ever done things that you know you shouldn't do? And this is kind of the funner part. Have you ever let your phone charge overnight? Well, we all do it. Every one of us. But why aren't we supposed to? Oh, it had something to do with the battery life. Oh, you're not supposed to do that. Or, they say you shouldn't watch a scary movie before you go to bed. Why? Well, you can get anxiety. You won't be able to sleep. You're going to think the boogeyman is under your bed, right? All these things. And the demons are going to come out. I don't know. But they say you shouldn't. But I actually think that's like the best time to watch. You're not supposed to keep hitting your snooze button, right? So a lot of people, you know what they do now? Instead of the snooze button, they'll set their alarm for every 7 to 10 minutes. So let's say it goes off at 7 in the morning, then it goes off at 7:07, then 7:14. I actually like hitting the snooze button, but there are so many things that I'm reading here that you're not supposed to do that we've all done. Have you ever cracked your knuckles? Oh my God, yes. When I was a kid, I used to crack my knuckles all the time, and I stopped because my mom said, your fingers are going to get so deformed, and I believed it. I mean, I didn't know any better, but we all really know that's totally not true. What about eating after 7 or 8 o'clock, right? You're not supposed to be eating after a certain time. I actually am more hungry at night than I am during the day. That's just how I am. Now, I try my best to eat healthy snacks, but sometimes I just, I want my chocolate, or, it just doesn't work for me. That does not work for me. Oh, I wanted to also ask you, and I do this all the time up until COVID. And the reason why I do it, let me tell you what it is first, where you're not supposed to sneak snacks into a theater. The reason why I bring snacks is I absolutely hate the popcorn. Yes, I do. And I like my skinny pop, low salt, but it has a little bit of sea salt in it. And I also like putting some Parmesan cheese on it. And I know if I'm going to be sitting in a theater, for more than 2 hours, I'm going to get the munchies. So I bring my own bag of popcorn, and I'm very particular about what other yummies I eat. I love snow caps. I have loved snow caps my whole life. It is like a staple. This is something that I have to have when I'm in a movie theater. I like to have a little bit of a mouthful of popcorn and then pop in some snow caps because you get that sweet and salty yumminess. And then I need to have my iced tea. And there's only certain iced teas that I like. And you can't get iced tea at a movie theater. So I know you're not supposed to sneak it in, but those are the reasons why I do it. It is cheaper actually as well. I think that you can spend much less money if you bring your own stuff, and it's healthier, right? Okay. What about not drinking caffeine at night? I'm not a big caffeine drinker. I do like iced tea, but I'm a tea drinker, and most of my tea is herbal teas. And I'll have green tea, but it doesn't have a lot of caffeine in it because I get the baby leaves. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Less fluoride. But I know that for some people, it can really just, totally hype them up like it would for me because I very rarely have it. But for others, it might not do a thing because their body might be so used to it that they might need to consume more. Okay, and what about, make sure that you eat that food before it cools down, and meanwhile you wind up not eating it because maybe you want it to cool down. But look, I know there's nothing worse than having this plate of delicious hot food waiting for you, and it's going to, wind up burning your tongue, but you just don't want to wait. You want to just eat it, right? Oh, well, done that. I am sure that some of these things that I'm mentioning to you, you have done before, like using a tanning bed. Okay. I think that I've only gone to a tanning salon once in my life to use a tanning bed. And I never did it again. living in Florida, I actually, believe it or not, did get a spray tan. And you're probably saying, well, why would you get a spray tan if you live in Florida? I don't tan easily. I'm a part Romanian. I have that very white, like snow white skin, like just really white. And I will burn first before I tan. And so I was going to an event and I wanted to have some color. But that was really it. But they say that you shouldn't be using tanning beds because it could lead to melanoma. I'll tell you something. I've done it once. I know people that have done it and still continue to do it. I remember seeing something, I think it was on 2020, where they put the next thing to the test, which was you're not supposed to exercise or swim after you eat. And I think that like these swimmers, they gave them like McDonald's or Burger King. I can't believe they ate it, but they did. And then they went swimming to see if they would, in fact, get, those pains. They talk about getting like really bad stomach pains. They did like 5 or 6 laps and came out and they were totally fine. So I believe that's more of a myth than anything. What about eating snow? We've all done it. We've all eaten snow, as long as you don't eat the yellow snow. Get it? Okay. Why do they say that you need to not eat snow? Well, as far as the discolored areas, you know why. But they're saying also it's not totally pure, but something about like, it's so cold that it could freeze your esophagus or something. Okay. Trying a little piece of snow is not going to freeze your inside. So I say go for it. Don't listen to anyone. Believe it or not, part of this list, part of the things you shouldn't do but do anyway is procrastinating. So we don't need to talk about that, but it is there. But I just want to mention one thing, that when you procrastinate and you really don't want to do something and you make yourself do it, that can lead to doing it wrong because you're rushing through it so fast. But another thing is repressing your feelings. I am not that person. I actually tell you exactly how I feel in the nicest way possible. But psychologists are like, if it's so unhealthy, and if you hold your feelings inside, then you're just going to become miserable. Whatever. I don't believe in that. Have you ever jaywalked? I know I have. But when I do it, I would actually look around and see if there's like any cops, Yeah, I mean, that's the lazy thing to do, going like in the middle of the street. But it's not, if you've done it, it's no big deal. Here in Florida, it's huge. Like if there's a cop there, forget it, you're gone. Whereas, some cops might let you go. But it doesn't seem to be that bad until you actually really do get a ticket. So I guess you just got to be careful out there. So those are many of the things that I just kind of, really wanted to discuss. But, I've become much more zen lately. And I have kind of figured out a few zen things to kind of like help me do the things that I don't want to do, that I was talking about earlier, and I didn't touch on it. Let me just say real quick that sometimes I hate meditating. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And many people think of it as, having to sit, crisscross applesauce and and find your center. But for me, my meditation is just finding a quiet moment or just listening to some soothing music. I won't sit there and actually meditate. That is meditation. I'll sit outside. I'll get some fresh air. I might go for a walk. To me, that's my kind of, my way of finding my own zen. And also letting go. Sometimes when I have that moment to myself, I find it a lot easier for me to kind of let go of a lot of my fears, things that might be holding me back, realizing that, it's not really reality. I'm being irrational. And once I realize the results and that I'm actually benefiting from, this meditation, I realize that I need to focus more on my intention. Like, why am I doing it? Am I trying to make things better for someone else? Is that my intention? What is the result that I want to get to? That what bad things might or might not happen. Like, and how bad really can it be? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, would it really suck? Yeah, but I'm willing to embrace it sucking, you know? I mean, that's why a lot of us are procrastinators and don't do a lot of these things because, when you do something hard, it sucks. But I remember reading that when you actually do something hard, it's such a wonderful feeling of elation, and you can let go of a lot of the anxiety. It's not easy, to do, but who cares? Yeah, life is hard. Things that are hard to do really suck. But life is not always, peaches and cream. It's not. Peaches and cream. That sounds really good. A little cinnamon. It's life sucks a lot, and we do everything we can to make it better. There's nothing wrong with life sucking at times, but it's just a matter of how do we embrace it. We have to embrace it, and just deal with it in the best way that we can. I mean, I actually think that life would be a little bit boring if there weren't those, bumps in the road, and just try and get moving, get going, and embrace it, and just try and do just a little. You know what I mean? Just do a little and then move on to something else and then maybe come back to it. Like if you have to write a thesis or you have to, you're a psychologist or a social worker and you need to see your next client, but you're just so not in the mood. Well, what can you do? You have to think of something that you can just do very little of that will maybe help, and then you can come back and do a little bit more. Kind of gives you something to look forward to, like a rational distraction. You just want to allow your mind to run away with things and not act on it so much, but run away with it. And it really will help your brain to kind of calm down. It allows your mind to not want to escape. It allows your mind to relax a little bit more when you do a little bit of something and then you come back to it, because then you have less and less to do each time you come back to it. And another thing that I found also, even though it's hard now in today's world, but being able to be grateful. A lot of times the tasks that we have to do, might be hard or might suck, like I said before. But focus, like I said earlier, on the good things about it. Like I really, really do not want to get up today to go to work, but then be grateful that you have a job when a lot of people don't. You have money for food and for shelter. Sometimes I can imagine what life would be like without all of the amenities that I have. And I will realize that I should be grateful and I should be feeling sorry for myself that I'm actually feeling the way that I'm feeling, because I have to do something that sucks. Oh, well, I'm more fortunate than other people. Other people are more fortunate than me. But I have to remember to always be grateful and not take anything for granted. And then finally, the most important things is you just learn from all this crap and you grow. You don't realize that you're actually growing, but growth is in the learning. And when you allow yourself to have some quiet time, if that's the way that you can meditate, just letting go of all the ideals that you have in your head. And like I said before, embracing how much things might be sucking for you. You're kind of giving into yourself. It actually helps you to learn more about who you really are. Who you are, which is a wonderful thing. So I think that it's a great opportunity We can look at all of this crap as an opportunity. I think that there's no better way than spending your time than growing and finding out who you really are. What do you think? I think it's a real great opportunity. So let's look at it that way. We can take an opportunity to learn from our mistakes and grow and be healthy and embrace the suck. All right? We all have to embrace the suck because it really does stink right now. But we have to find a way to embrace it and move on because life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. What's that from? Forrest Gump, one of my most favorite movies. Anyway, this is how I'm trying to live my life right now, in the present and just trying to, absorb everything and not get myself into such a situation where I'm just angry all the time because it's a horrible feeling when you feel that way. So let's all just know we're in it together and let's do everything we can to make our lives the best they can be at this moment. Until next week, I hope that you enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend. And remember, you can find me on any podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor, at Nothing But Julie. And that is also my name for all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. And check out my new blog. It is www.nothingbutjulie.wordpress.com.